Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, as you can probably tell from my voice, it sounds like my cold might have gotten worse, but it's actually getting better. And it's a good news that my cold is getting better because we've got quite a spicy topic on the schedule for us today. And that is going to be Chu Yan's kit, his release, and unfortunately, what I might consider to be one of the most tailored and one of the most potentially not that great value of a pull this unit might actually be based off the current roster that's in the game. And this is basically going to be Chu Yan's team building issue, his team building problem, primarily due to the fact that he is one of the most specifically tailored units we might have seen in the history of the game. And so the easiest place for us to really start off over here isn't by taking a look necessarily at any of these other abilities that he has, but mainly focusing on this component over here, his outro skill. Because one thing that's clear about Chu Yan is that he's a very fast sub-DPS character. He has an extremely fast rotation. He has things like his inherent skill over here that essentially, gives him additional concerto upon performing his Forte Enhanced Heavy Attack. That just means that as a character, he's going to be able to get in, get out, do what he needs to do really fast, apply his team buffs, and then, of course, deliver his outro skill, which grants a whopping 50% echo skill damage amplification to the incoming resonator really, really, really fast. And the thing is, when it comes to Chu Yan, this is a great asset to him because it makes him an extremely powerful buffer, but on the flip side, it also makes him currently one of the most limited units in the game in terms of use cases. And the reason for that is pretty simple, ladies and gentlemen. Echo skill damage as a stat is something that the game needed, because we have echo skill damage dealers, and there's no other character in the game that directly buffs echo skill damage. Unfortunately, that also means we have to take a look at the cast of characters currently in the game that deal echo skill damage. So let's just go ahead, go into the team menu over here, and take a quick look at the rundown of characters that do that. We have her, and you'll notice it doesn't actually list echo skill damage over here, but in Galbrena's standard rotation, about 70% of her damage is echo skill damage. So that's one character. That's the second character in the game that deals echo skill damage, and once again, it's not actually listed out over here. Chu Yan is essentially a specifically tailored unit that's releasing in a couple of hours, maybe already released by now by the time you've seen this video, and the only teammates that he's able to work with and actually benefit in any meaningful way at all are two units that got released within, I think Flova got released in, was it July? Somewhere around those lines? Two units that got released within, the last 4 months. And the fact of the matter is quite simple. If you haven't already pulled one of these units, Phrolova or Galbrena, the use cases of this character will be almost non-existent on your account. Let's just take a look at what Chu Yan is going to be able to provide, as a character, unless, if you're not factoring in this outro skill at all. Let's just take a look. He has, built into his kit, a 30% echo skill damage bonus to the nearby resonator on the team, This is something that, naturally, if you don't have any echo skill damage dealers on your team, it's not going to be that helpful. Yes, it's going to buff the damage, if you just go ahead and you're on a character like Cartithia, and you, summon her sword, and you have it, deal whatever amount of damage that you see over here. Yes, that will technically buff the damage that this is dealing, but it's a very small part of every character's rotation, their baseline echo skill. And the thing is that that's only one of the buffs, sure, He has more. But even his other buff, just as if that's the only thing he's providing to your team, this buff over here that increases your crit damage by 30%, that's not really a great reason to slot somebody into a team either. If all they're providing is a stat increase of 30% crit damage and then absolutely nothing else, assuming that you don't have echo skill damage dealers on your team, assuming that you don't have that sort of stuff built up. The reasoning behind this is pretty simple, He's a character that's meant to really be that premium support, that premium sort of unit for these echo skill archetypes. But in reality, if you don't have those characters, what is this guy going to do? And the end result is, ladies and gentlemen, this might be one of the most bait characters on the planet, where you'll see all of these amazing animations, you'll see this super smooth gameplay, you'll have seen his amazing Resonator showcase, and you might be somebody that decides to pull on him for things like aesthetics, things like the aura farming, all of that. Or you might just like how he looks visually because the whole like drunken swordsman going around, twirling around and just slicing up enemies is absolutely badass. If you don't have the right characters to make him function, ladies and gentlemen, I feel like this is going to be one of the most regretful pulls in the history of the game for you. Naturally, that's not going to apply to me because I have all the units required to really make him shine, but that might not be the case for everybody. I also noticed some people going ahead and saying that Qiuyuan's buffs don't work for Phrolova. There's a couple of just little bits of... I'll just clarify some bits of misinformation regarding that. Yes, Qiuyuan's buffs, nearly all of them say things like nearby active resonators on the field. That means that you have to be on the field to benefit from things like his crit damage buff. Even on Bamboo Shade over here, nearby active resonators in the field gain 30% echo skill damage. Yes, that means that you have to be on the field to activate this as well. And of course, for the outro skill, it expires on swap, so you can't go off field. People might think that this has absolutely no synergy at all with Phrolova, simply due to the fact that, yes, she goes off field after using her liberation to summon Hecate. That's true. However, she has an attack. Actually, the biggest attack in her kit, ladies and gentlemen, Scarlet Coda. This attack over here, it is considered as echo skill damage. It's also considered as casting an echo skill. That means it's not going to get buffed, right? Because it's considered as resonance skill damage. It's not considered as echo skill damage. But the reason why Phrolova still benefits a lot from Qiuyuan is the fact that Hecate's attacks trigger whenever teammates cast an echo skill. And when you look over here, Qiuyuan actually has, on his Forte circuit, all of his attacks in the Ink Splash and Mind State, basically the three of them, all count as casting echo skills. And so what that means is that he actually single-handedly can fuel about 4 Hecate enhanced attacks. And that means that, well, that's really good for Phrolova, even if she's not benefiting from the echo skill damage bonuses while she's on field. And the thing is, guys, Phrolova's actually a character with a lot of already built-in echo skill damage, specifically from the Dream of the Lost set, as well as potentially, if you do have it, her weapon, which also gives echo skill damage amplification. And the end result is that when she actually uses Nightmare Hecate, leaps down and does like the slash, this is... I'm going to be honest, this is about 450%. It's one of the highest damage echo skills in the game. And then it's also actually fully benefiting from things like Qiuyuan's outro skill buff, his 30% echo skill damage buff from wherever is from the Bamboo Shade effect as well. And then it's also benefiting from the crit damage, all of that, so on and so forth. So this actually becomes one of the craziest nukes in her kit as well. Not necessarily at the same level as Scarlet Coda, but it gets close when you think about all those buffs ramping up and applying there. And this is also the other part that I didn't necessarily get into, but I probably should have. We got Emerald Sentence, where that thing just gives a 20% echo skill damage buff to the entire team when he uses an outro skill. It doesn't have any sort of like specific requirement that the character's on field. So that's another reason, when Qiuyuan's with this signature, that he's a great Phrolova support. So that's just a little bit of the misinformation that I'm correcting right now. People seem to be under the assumption that none of his buffs, he has absolutely no use cases at all for Phrolova. That is one of the furthest things possible from the truth, especially if you have his weapon. But even if you don't, you're making a shit ton of attacks for Hecate, and that's going to do a shit ton of buffing for her damage output. So yeah, that's just something that I wanted to clarify over there. So no, Qiuyuan isn't just a Galbrena support. He's not just a, what's it called? He's not usable with only one character in the game, which is, I think, perhaps the narrative that some people are trying to spread. He is actually usable with 2. But getting us back on track, it is still a bit of a concern. Because yes, one thing is certain about an outro skill like this. This is going to be something that's very, very, very future-proof, right? This is something that's going to have a lot of value as the number of echo skill damage dealers grows in the future. However, it's also a situation where you're wondering, was it the best time to release a character like this when he requires one of the last 2 characters released within the last 4 months to be able to actually utilize any of the buffs or any of the mechanics that are in his kit? I don't necessarily know. And I do think it is like a bit of a, maybe we could have had like a 4-star echo skill damage dealer. Maybe we could have had like a standard echo skill damage dealer. Just something along the lines where if you maybe are somebody that's a bit more budget, you are somebody that's a little bit more free to play, that you have somewhere to actually put this guy and use him when he's on your account. Because the reality is simple. Phrolova has a great team that doesn't involve Chu Yan. You put your Flova on a Giga Premium team where you have Rosia and Cantarella, and she'll just absolutely crush all the content in the game. You put Galbrena on a team with Mono Fusion, and then that'll work just fine, even though it might be Brant and Lupa actually doing all the work. This team will crush every single bit of content in the game. Believe me when I say this, ladies and gentlemen. Because of how specifically tailored Qiuyuan's kit is, if you don't put him with like a Phrolova or a Galbrena, I feel like he is going to struggle a lot in a lot of content in the game. Taking a look at his kit, being able to see some of his numbers from the live test over here that we had in version 2.7 story, he is essentially a like 2-character package. And the odd part is that this is a 2-character package with him being like the sub DPS, while the DPSs in this equation already have other teams that they can use. All he does is he takes these teams that are performing at like 90-95% level and then bumps them up by like an additional 5, maybe 10% over what already exists. And I think that as like a pulling decision, or like a, you know, like a reason to pull, is pretty weak for 90% of the population. And so the end result is that I hope you really think a lot about whether or not you actually need this guy. I hope you think a lot about whether or not you plan on building out more and more echo skill damage across your roster and across your teams moving forward. Because, ladies and gentlemen, this is not like pulling a Yuno. This is not like pulling, many other sub DPS characters, because Yuno is the outro skill over here. That's the most, that's easily the most similar to what we're seeing. Resonator gains a 50% heavy attack damage amplification for 14 seconds, right? The only real difference that we see over here is the fact that echo skill damage got replaced with heavy attack. But this is the reality of the situation when it comes to heavy attack damage. You have this character who deals heavy attack damage. You have this character who deals heavy attack. You got this character who deals heavy attack. Who else do you have? Oh, right, you also got this character that deals heavy attack. And fuck it, you also got this character who also deals a little bit of heavy attack damage as well. She's just able to work with so many other units on her release, and she just inherently has more value. And I really can't say the same thing about Chu Yan. Kuro's kind of really trying their best, I think, to build out these new damage types, build out these new teams, build out new potential for where they want to take the direction of the game. But it feels like they are rushing echo skill damage in a similar sort of way that I feel like they rushed out some of the things regarding negative statuses and debuffs, right? Very similar to the whole like Zani Phoebe situation that we had going on over here, where we don't feel like we have any like 4-star buffers. But in Qiuyuan's case, it feels like we don't have enough like actual echo skill damage dealers, or like echo skill sort of like echo skill damage recipients of his outro buff. And it's just like, it almost feels like you're getting way less value pulling him than you would for almost any other sub DPS character in the game. Doubling that with the fact that you need to have pulled these 2 units within the last 4 months, neither of them have gotten a rerun yet. It's like, I feel like a lot of players could simply just be in a situation where he has absolutely no use case on your account. And I think the worst part about all of this is the fact that this could have been easily rectified by making him similar to Yuno in design. And by similar to Yuno in design, I mean making him actually playable as a main DPS while he's at S0, and not locking his main DPS potential behind S3. because that's essentially how this guy's kit works. You would have noticed by now that his S3 essentially it turns him into Camellia. By turning him into Camellia, what I mean is that he gains a new ability called Straw Cape and Drizzly Rain, which is essentially the same thing as Ephemeral. It deals a burst of damage to enemies, consumes his Concerto bar, and then gives him access to another rotation, where he regenerates his Forte circuit and then gains a huge damage increase on the enhanced heavy attacks that he does afterwards. And the thing is that if this baseline capability was just already in his kit, then this character would suddenly become so much more feasible and so much more desirable, and actually usable without kind of bringing your roster, your team's performance down if you don't have these characters. Because is entirely playable as like a main DPS at S0, S0R0, S0R1 without having Augusta, without having Qiuyuan, without having these heavy attack damage dealers. She feels self-sufficient, she feels great, and she works. And this is a character that got released before Chu Yan. But then we got this situation over here where it feels like this is the sequence node that makes him as usable as but then it's locked behind having 3 copies of him. And to me, this is just the most questionable decision that I feel like Kuro Games has ever done, because why do I feel like I need to pull 3 copies of this guy to get the same experience as this unit at S0? And I think it's a little bit rough. And I feel like it just would have made so many more individuals would have been likely to pull this guy if you didn't need another limited character to literally make him, I don't know, like more than just like a 30% crit damage bot. And I think it kind of sucks. My overall take is just, I feel like his S3 that turns him into Camellia, right? That lets him consume his Concerto to extend his rotation. That should have just been in his baseline kit. Make him playable as a main DPS, make him feel good as a main DPS at S0, and then just buff that capability later on down the track of sequence nodes. Because that's literally what they did with where her S2 is her last supportive sequence node. Once you go past Yuno's S2, which also buffs her own damage output, every single one is just like a pure personal DPS boost, aside from this dog shit one that just gives like a tiny shield. Every single other one is a pure DPS boost for the character. And then for him, he kind of just feels like he's getting screwed over a little bit. I feel like this is a bit more of like this has to be one of the most puzzling design decisions, I think, just character-wise that I've seen. If you want to play him as more than just like an echo skill damage buffer, you got to pull him S3. If you want to play Yuno as more than just a heavy attack buffer, you just pull her at S0 and you're good. I'm not sure why it feels like if you enjoy this character, you like his design, and you want to see him as a main DPS, you have to pay like this heavy premium price, because otherwise, like I said before, ladies and gentlemen, you're in for a rude awakening. If you only have this guy at S0, you want to pull him, you want to pull his weapon, do whatever, do all of that, and then you don't have either of these 2 units. You're going to have a really rough time making him work. I just hope that in the future, when it comes to kit designs like this, when it comes to, future decision making, they take more of like the Yuno approach to these matters rather than going with the Chu Yan approach, because I 100% think that they easily could have balanced this form switching, much like how Camellia already has it. They easily could have balanced it to make the character function at S0, and then just made his S3 over here buff the main DPS form more. But as it is right now, it kind of does come off as one of the more predatory and just like questionable things I've seen. Maybe, yes, male characters don't make that much money, and so if you are somebody that wants to make a male character work, you got to pay extra. I'm not really sure why that situation is what it is, but yeah, I'm personally just like, as like a personal form of protest, even though I do want to get him S3 because I do want to play him as a main DPS, I might just not do it because I don't want to actually approve of practices like this to sort of like block off entire abilities behind character sequence nodes. This is the first time that they've actually done it. And I didn't even bring this up yet. Brandt's playable as a main DPS as well. And like, he also is like a sub DPS sort of character. Brandt is also playable as a main DPS at S0. And it's just like, why is this guy getting like the short end of the stick when the past characters that have filled like this hybrid role don't require nearly even close to the level of investment that's required for him? I don't know. What sucks the most is that the amount of effort that they've put into things like this guy's trailer, his advertising, the marketing, like all I need to do is just like, let me just look up Wuthering Waves right now, actually. The amount of work that they put into like, wait a second. That's not the official account. That's porn. It's like this trailer was like amazing, right? Like the animations and stuff that they put into this, like the fight scenes, the choreography, all of this like work. And it's for like a unit that's like the most specific and tailored one in the game that like nobody in their right mind should really be pulling if they're trying to like maximize account value. Think about it this way, ladies and gentlemen. What free-to-play team options does this unit have? If you pull him and maybe a shorekeeper and like no limited units, what free-to-play options does he fucking have? All the Echo skill damage dealers are premium limited units. What, he's going to use Verena Mortifi? I guarantee you, if you use Verena Mortifi with this character, you will not clear... I don't think you can clear any content in the game. Maybe we'll see somebody do it live. Maybe I'll try to do it live. I genuinely think you're not going to clear any content in the game. I'm being entirely honest with you. Hey, we'll test it out on his release. But yeah, I don't think it's happening. My overall take on this is Qiuyuan's release is not necessarily the best time to pull him. I think Qiuyuan's a character that's going to grow a lot in value over time. I think that he's going to become like a much more higher priority pick once other Echo skill damage dealers are released, and I think he's going to age well. But I just think in terms of like his first banner, I think just in terms of like his first overall take on the meta of the game, he's going to be ranked high for sure. I think he's going to be S on the Pride to Win tier list. I think he's going to be a great support. But it's also just like, yeah, if you don't have the characters that he partners with, the guy is going to be like Confession Mode Phoebe. He's going to be like a Confession Mode Phoebe without a Zani. But the good news is about Confession Mode Phoebe without Zani is you can just play Phoebe as an Absolution main DPS if you don't have Zani. Yeah, you can just play her in her DPS mode. The one that does way more damage. And so, Kuro had literally done the homework even for this character. If you don't have Zani, you can still make her function and still make her feel good. I don't know what the fuck you do with Qiuyuan if you don't have Galbrena or you don't have Phrolova. All these other sub-DPSs that have these mechanics, they can be played as a main DPS. Her, him, her, and then it's just him getting, like, fucking told to go fuck himself. He reminds me more of, like, a Yinlin or a Jeja when we're in the era of modern sub-DPSs that are able to perform multiple roles. And it feels like with this one, we've gone back in time, and to regain that modern capability, it literally is, hey guys, go pull S3. Yeah, if you want him to feel like he's as complete as a Brandt, Yuno, or a Phoebe, just go pull S3. So yeah, that's my personal rant. That's my personal spiel. You can probably tell I'm not too excited or too happy about this, but it doesn't look like very much is going to be changing over here because there's been no updates regarding his kit reveal. And I just genuinely hope that Kuro doesn't do something like this again in the future, or they do like some crazy shit on release and just update his nodes completely. I don't really know. I don't think they're going to do it at this point, but I think that this is one of the most just genuinely like predatory things that they've done, and I think it's worth calling out. Let me know what you all thought. Peace.